It is the divisional round edition of the HBCU NFL Report on HBCU Game Day. I am Symone Stanley, joined by Luke Williams, and we are here to recap all of the HBCU action we saw this past weekend in the NFL playoffs. We are also going to react to some viral moments around the league and bring you guys your 2022 NFL HBCU Players of the Year. Luke, how are you feeling after this weekend?
Not bad, not bad. Fortunately, our HBCU guys, particularly on Kansas City, as well as your Philadelphia Eagles, advanced. So we're still alive to have some HBCU players playing in the Super Bowl in, I guess it's 3 weeks from now. So yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad to see the Cowboys fall by the wayside, and glad to see that we should have some very, very exciting games in the championship round this coming week when Cincinnati takes on Kansas City, as well as your Eagles facing those dangerous San Francisco 49ers.
So you had to put dangerous in front of them, but not dangerous in front of the Eagles?
Well, you know, you're the favorite. You're the top seed, and you know the way that they took apart Dallas with a third-string quarterback. If we were handicapping the game, I think the Eagles have the advantage on offense. I think Jalen Hurts is a better quarterback than the rookie for San Francisco. Third string quarterback for San Francisco. I guess the big question is, if there's an advantage, maybe San Francisco has a leading defense in the NFL. Jalen Hurts and the offense, I think, have an advantage on that side. So regardless, I think both of them will be great games.
Okay, I'm paying attention to your terminology, Luke, because you called them dangerous, okay? I like being the underdog. We like playing as the underdog, so that's just fine. Keep on thinking the Niners are going to come in and do what they do. But before we talk about the championship game, we got to recap the divisional weekend. So the Philadelphia Eagles, with Javon Hargrave, former South Carolina State University Bulldog, helped leading the way in the trenches. We put away the New York Giants 38-7. Luke, going into the game, everybody was high on the New York Giants. They were calling this man Vanilla Vic, Daniel Jones, and they came to Philly, and nothing was sweet. Javon Hargrave, again, we've been talking about him all season long, was a part of those guys up front for us, putting that pressure on the New York Giants. Javon ended the day with 2 tackles, 1 solo, 1 assisted, but keep in mind that, you know, we were resting pretty much the whole fourth quarter against the Giants. On the other side of the ball, the Giants, Jamie Gillan, the punter for them. I said last week, Luke, Jamie Gillan needed to be putting in a lot of work for the Eagles to win the game, and I think
he did.
He did.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he had to punt 5 times. He averaged 43 yards a punt, but he was, for all practical purposes, he was rendered irrelevant because of the way that the Eagles dominated the Giants. But yeah, he did finish the season. He finished the season well, and we'll talk about him when we get to the players of the year in terms of special teams. But yeah, very, very impressive performance by the Eagles. Of course, Javon Hargrave was a big part of that. The defensive pressure that they put on Jones and stifling that Giants offense, stifling Saquon Barkley. So yeah, big win for the Eagles, and they advance. I'm actually going to be rooting for your team going against San Francisco. Should be a very interesting matchup.
Are you rooting for us, Luke? Are you really?
Yes.
We are definitely going to need Javon, the grave digger, to dig a little grave for the Niners. They got Elijah Mitchell. They've got Christian McCaffrey. Everyone is sleeping on our run defense. They are. I don't know why you would sleep on these guys that we have in our trenches, but I ain't tripping. I'm going to let them sleep, like Drake said. But another guy got sent home from the HBCU ranks, but he did get some action. Dallas Cowboys versus San Francisco 49ers. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, tough game for Dak Prescott. You know, he's getting a lot of flack with that $40+ million contract. He threw 2 costly interceptions. San Francisco was not stellar on offense, but their third-string quarterback, I can't even think of his name. He's, what is his name? Flurky or something, I forgot. Purdy, yeah. I mean, he didn't turn the ball over, and that was the key to the game because it was really a field goal game for the most part until the late score when he threw his second pick, when Dak Prescott threw his second pick. But, yeah, we did find out Marquise Bell, who had really been inactive for the great part of the second part of the season, did get into the game. Didn't have any didn't have any stats. He only played a few snaps on defense. He played about 14 snaps on special teams. But Dallas could not get by the 49ers. The 49ers were too much for him. And Purdy, as you said, he played well. For a third-string guy, you wouldn't expect him to play as well as he did. He threw the ball well, distributed the ball well, managed the offense, and most importantly, didn't turn the ball over. So Marquise Bell goes home with a season where he got on the field a little bit, not a lot. He didn't play a lot of downs on defense. When he did get into, I think it was 6 games, he played primarily on special teams. So he and the Cowboys are going home quite disappointed. I know, it's always a big contingent of Cowboy fans everywhere that you go, including here in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I live. There are some sad Cowboy fans, but the 49ers certainly took care of business, so they will be headed to meet your Philadelphia Eagles.
Good job for Marquise Bell, former FAMU defensive back, getting some action with the Cowboys. He did go undrafted, and that was a whole, I don't want to say the word scandal, but it was some controversy, some conversation on whether he should have gotten drafted versus sign as an undrafted free agent. He did sign as an undrafted free agent, but it's good to see him getting some action, especially in the postseason, especially how pivotal that game was, them trusting him in that game. But on the AFC side, Joshua Williams is moving on, and he got some action in a tight game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Jags in the divisional game. Former Fayetteville State University Bronco. He got into the game. That was good to see.
It was. And Joshua this year has played in all 17 games. He's the only rookie, actually, from the HBCU ranks this year that played in all 17 games. And he was a contributor. He actually started 4 games. They gave him an opportunity to see if he can handle the big time, so to speak. So he only got 3 snaps on defense this week. He primarily played on special teams. But they are playing 2 rookies in their defensive backfield, in their defensive secondary. And counting Joshua Williams, it would be 3. So I think they're being selective in terms of who they use and when they use it. But the fact that he played all 17 games this year, he had 4 starts, was certainly a feather in his cap. Certainly bodes well for him going forward. He's not a guy you would expect that's going to be on the bubble, so to speak, going forward. They have gotten some confidence in him. He did have an interception this year as well. So, yes, he will advance. And as I said, they will advance. The Chiefs will advance with an injured Pat Mahomes as they take on the dangerous, since I use dangerous on the NFC side for San Francisco, the dangerous Cincinnati Bengals, who I think I say dangerous because, they went to the Super Bowl a year ago. Nobody was expecting. I don't think anybody was expecting them to make it this far. They certainly didn't think they were going to house Buffalo as they did. They really stymied Buffalo's offense in getting a big win for them in the divisional round. So they're in the championship game for the 2nd year in a row. And I have to say, Kansas City better watch out, especially with an injured Patrick Mahomes. It's not going to be easy. But that should be a great game. I think Cincinnati is probably, of the 4 that are in it, is probably the biggest surprise. Most people were thinking of Buffalo, and the fact that Buffalo was playing at home, they thought Buffalo would be in this game. But Cincinnati has proven for the 2nd year in a row that they're one of the top and elite teams in the NFL.
There's only one team that has an HBCU player starting going to the championship, AFC championship, NFC championship, and that is your Philadelphia Eagles. So if anybody needs, if your team, it's 28 teams and fan bases at home right now. If you're looking for a team to, support through the rest of the way of the playoffs, go ahead and start rooting for the Eagles because, like I said, Javon Hargrave, what a better story than Javon Hargrave starting on the number one. Yes, Lou, I know earlier you said San Fran had the number one defense. Starting on the number one defense, which is the Philadelphia Eagles, and really leading the way, especially since I keep saying this, Lou, I keep reiterating this fact. Going into the season, Javon Hargrave was coming into a contract year. He's an undrafted free agent after this year, and, you know, you're really fighting for that money, not only with the team that you're playing with now, but you want to put the league on notice that you want that big, hefty bag. And we actually drafted and traded up for a defensive tackle, Jordan Davis from UGA. He was on the championship team last season. He was arguably the best player on the championship team, one of the best nose tackles, defensive tackles coming out of the draft. We drafted Jordan Davis, pretty much sending a signal to Javon and Fletcher Cox that, hey, this is a young dude coming off one of the best defenses and the best defense in college football. And that was sending a message to them. Like, this dude could be your cheap rookie contract replacement. And for Javon Hargrave to really step up, Jordan Davis can't get on the field because of Javon Hargrave. Like, it's just great to see the way that he really held his own, had a career year, career high sacks, 11 sacks in the regular season, a career high for him, really earning that money. So shout out to Javon. Like I said, if y'all need any reason to, you know, root for another team, it will be the Eagles. But the Chiefs are the only other team with an HBC player on the active roster, and that is Joshua Williams out of Fayetteville State University. So
absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the bigger moments from the week. Were you surprised by that performance from the Buffalo Bills?
Oh, certainly. Playing at home, you know, if there's any team that's been pegged all year from the beginning of the year to be somebody who was going to be in the Super Bowl, it was the Buffalo Bills. You know, they said that that the wide receiver, Stephon Diggs, didn't even hang around. He was so upset with the way that they played, the fact that they would lose the way that they did to Cincinnati. Cincinnati was obviously the superior team. They moved the ball better. They ran the ball better. And Josh Allen, who, you know, they've tried to peg him and crown him as the second coming, the Cincinnati defense, which doesn't have a lot of so-called stars,
right,
so to speak. They really shut them down in Buffalo in a driving snowstorm, which I'm sure was very hard to play. But it looked like Cincinnati had better footing on offense and defense in terms of the way that they attacked the Bills. And I think it's probably a credit to Zach Taylor and the role, the job that he's done as the head coach over there. Second year in a row they make it this far. You know, they come out of the division, the Steelers division. They come out of my Pittsburgh Steelers division. I don't have any love for the Bengals, but I have to give them credit because they've proven, you know, Burrow, he kind of struggled the way Trevor Lawrence struggled in his first year. He was a number one pick. And Burrow kind of struggled his first year. He got hurt. I think it was towards the end of his first year, he got hurt. He had to rehabilitate a bad knee, and he's come back strong. That guy had a tremendous year at LSU when he ended up being the number one pick in the draft. And he's proven to be well worth the investment because, you know, in 3 years now in the league, he's into the championship game in the AFC and 2 years in a row back-to-back. And this is including, remember that game, you know, when he struggled early, even in the first round, and they were able to come back and win. Kudos to Zach Taylor, kudos to Joe Burrow as they go in to face Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs with Joshua Williams in tow.
Yeah, I figured that the Bengals were going to win that game just because I don't have that much confidence in Josh Allen. Josh Allen is someone who is going to turn the ball over, going to put the ball in dangerous situations where Joe Burrow isn't. But I was not expecting them to come out so flat. It never even seemed like they were energized or even mentally into the game. And you talk about your friends over there in Cincinnati. After the game, Eli Apple was trolling Stephon Diggs, pretty much trolling the whole Bills organization. What do you think about that? Eli Apple, he has a lot of mouth on him, but he don't really be backing it up on the field.
Well, he seemed to back it up this time. I think Stephon ended up with 5 catches for 37 yards. Probably one of the reasons why he didn't stick around for the post-game press conference. He was very disappointed, and he said afterwards when they finally caught up with him, "What did you think? I was going to sit around and want to talk to you guys after such a disappointing performance?" But yeah, nobody was picked higher than the Bills. I certainly wasn't expecting Cincinnati. I didn't think they could do it 2 years in a row. Certainly didn't think they could do it on the road at Buffalo. Certainly didn't think they would play with the confidence. And I agree with you. They appear to have good footing, whereas it looks like the Bills were struggling for footing. And, this is the whole thing about playing in Buffalo, playing in that cold weather. Supposedly, those teams that don't play in the bad weather would struggle coming into that environment, whereas Buffalo would be comfortable. But it was just the opposite. Cincinnati looked like the more sure-footed team, looked like the more confident team, had more energy, and Buffalo almost didn't show up for the game. So it's a surprise, but I think we got to stop being surprised at the Bengals. This will be the second year in a row that they've gotten there, and I wouldn't surprise. They've beaten Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City before. It wouldn't surprise me if they come through again, especially with an injured Pat Mahomes. His leg, I think it was the running back for the Dallas Cowboys broke his leg in the game against San Francisco. And Pollard, and it looked like Pat Mahomes had a very similar kind of thing where the guy landed on his leg. It bent kind of almost sideways, but they saying his is not broken. They did take him in the locker room. He was very upset to even go in the locker room to be checked, but they came back and said it wasn't broken, and they said he's making progress. So we're going to have to see a limping Pat Mahomes against that Cincinnati squad. I think is going to maybe narrow the gap, narrow the point spread. It's not going to be a big Kansas City point spread, I think, going in. So should be a great game again.
It'll be interesting to see, of course, Patrick Mahomes' situation, because even if it's not a break, a sprain could swell up after, a few hours after the game and whatnot. But the Bengals-Chiefs matchup, it don't even matter to me about Patrick Mahomes when I'm analyzing this. It's the Chiefs' defense, because the Jaguars versus Chiefs game came down to Trevor Lawrence not being able to make certain throws and Trevor Lawrence turning the ball over. We know for a fact Joey Burrow isn't going to be making those mistakes, and Joey Burrow is going to be making 10 times the throws that Trevor Lawrence can't make. The reason why the Chiefs should be worried, they should be worried about their defense against Joey Burrow versus what Patrick Mahomes has going on, because the Jaguars were in that game. If they just had a little better quarterback, they would have took the Chiefs down.
And don't leave out Joe Mixon. Don't leave out Jamar Chase. They have serious weapons. Mixon was a load against Miami and played with a lot of confidence. And look, the Chiefs' running game with this kid as a rookie, Pacheco, it's okay, but it's not Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is an absolute beast.
Right.
Jamar Chase is an absolute beast.
Higgins.
There are reasons to think. There's reason to think that Cincinnati in many cases may be the favorite. The equalizer is really Patrick Mahomes. And if he's injured, maybe he's not as much an equalizer as you would think. And that's what I'm thinking. Maybe I would give the advantage, even though I want to see Joshua Williams go to the Super Bowl in his rookie year. I would think that the Chiefs are going to come in maybe as somewhat of an underdog facing Cincinnati this week.
So we're about to get into our HBCU Players of the Year from the NFL. But before we do, lastly, I got to ask you one more thing about your division. What do you think about Lamar Jackson? Is he returning to the Ravens? Is he playing with another team?
Well, for what it's worth, Harbaugh, the coach, says that he wants him back. Obviously, it's going to always be about whether they can come to the right terms. They didn't sign him going into the season when they had an opportunity to, and the fact that he missed as many games as he did, I'm sure the fact that Harbaugh wants him back is a consideration, but it's not going to be the only thing. They're going to have to come to terms. Lamar Jackson wants big-time money like the rest of these quarterbacks are getting. but they can make the argument that he's missed games the last 2 years, critical games. Obviously, if you can't play in the playoffs and you got to play a third-string quarterback, your value may go down. But I would guarantee that, the way things go these days, if they don't give him the kind of money that he wants, Lamar Jackson, there are plenty of teams that would be glad to have Lamar Jackson at quarterback. So I think it's a 50-50 bargain right now. Obviously, they couldn't agree to the terms before the season. And he certainly didn't do anything in terms of missing almost the last half of the season to endear himself to the people in Baltimore. So I think it's a 50-50 shot right now. Certainly Harbaugh being on this side, let's at least the management know for the Ravens that he wants him back. And I don't think he's looking forward to going into the year with the two backups that they have in terms of Baltimore being the kind of playoff contender and Super Bowl contender that they could be with Lamar Jackson.
Agreed. Now let's see if we agree on these Player of the Year choices. It's been a long season.
Well,
we've had several players drafted this
has.
season after going a while without players getting drafted from HBCUs. And these guys came in and showed out. And not only the newbies, we had a lot of veterans step up and show out this season as well. So starting with defense, who is the player of the year?
I thought it was a special. Yeah, I think head and shoulders above anyone else was Javon Hargrave with the Philadelphia Eagles, the
Really?
out of South Carolina State, the grave digger as they call him. He had his best season, I would say. He not only had his first double-digit sack season with 11, he had best seasons and career best in other areas like solo tackles, assisted tackles.
Precious.
Javon Hargrave became a force in this league. I'm sorry?
I said pressures.
Pressures, yeah, and he was tied for 14th in the league in sacks, and that's unheard of for a defensive tackle. I think he only trailed the guy out of Kansas City. What's number 95 for Kansas City's name? The big guy in the middle of Kansas City. He had 14 sacks. Javon Hargrave had 11. This is from the defensive tackle position. You don't get those number of sacks from the defensive tackle position. We get 8 or 9 sacks out of Cam Hayward for Pittsburgh. We're elated. He had 11, and I see his career high. Great, a very significant part of the Eagles' offensive line. He is head and shoulders defensive player of the year from the HBCU ranks. But there were other guys who had, I wouldn't call them breakout seasons, but they were special seasons in the sense that they reached some things they hadn't done before. For example, out of the Arizona Cardinals, we had Antonio Hamilton, who played his way into starting 5 games. He had never started games before, basically played on special teams his whole career. He ends up with a career high of 37 tackles, and he had an interception. In his 7th year in the league, it was his first interception. That was a milestone for him, not only to become a starter, to play regular minutes for the Cardinals, but also to get that interception. Danny Johnson out of Southern University playing for the Washington Commanders, very similar. He started a career-high 5 games at defensive back. He also had his first career interception for the Commanders. He had career highs not only in terms of an interception, but in total tackles, solo tackles, and assisted tackles. He was primarily a kick returner last year and slash defensive back. This year, the coach at the Commanders said he made a big step forward. So he had a good year also. Grover Stewart, last year he was a historically Black College Hall of Fame, Football Hall of Fame Player of the Year from the HBCU ranks. This year he had a career high of 70 tackles as well as 4 sacks and 3 passes defended. He had a season high 12 tackles in 1 game. Grover Stewart had a standout year, you can say, especially minus Shaquille Leonard playing behind him on the Colts defensive line. And then Joe Thomas out of the Chicago Bears, out of South Carolina State. He had a great season. When Roquan Smith got traded to the Baltimore Ravens, he ended up starting 9 games. He finished with 61 total tackles. This is his second highest total of his career. He had a career high and 26 assists and also 35 solo tackles. But the most important thing was he showed that he can be an every down, every day player for the Chicago Bears. So we had some candidates, but certainly I thought your Javon Hargrave was head and shoulders above everybody else in terms of starting all 17 games, of having a career high in sacks. So our defensive player of the year is certainly the gravedigger, Javon Hargrave.
I love it. I thought that you might, I knew it was going to be between Javon and James Houston. I thought that you might be tripping a little bit. I doubted you a little bit because there were some times during the week.
What I thought is that rather than putting James Houston on the defense, I would put him amongst the rookies and just grade the rookies that came out this year rather than trying to make, because as you know, he didn't play until the 12th game of the season, and trying to, even though he did fabulous things on those last 7 games of the season, he didn't and wasn't a consistent performer. He didn't get an opportunity. So I kept him in the rookie class rather than putting him on the defensive side, and talked about the guys who were veterans in the league. Those are the guys that we considered for the defensive player of the year.
I respect it. On the offensive side,
okay,
what did it come down to?
Yeah, on the offensive side, we were primarily choosing between offensive linemen, and there were 3 standouts, if you will. One of them is the biggest veteran, the longest tenured player in the NFL from the HBCU ranks, Teron Armstead, out of Arkansas Pine Bluff, in his 10th season in the league. He played his first 9 years in New Orleans. And listen, when you play left tackle like Teron Armstead does, you have to protect usually the blind side of your quarterback if your quarterback is right-handed. This side, he had to protect the open side for Tua Tagovailoa for the Miami Dolphins. He did it well. He didn't play, but he got in only 13 games. He's getting a little old in the tooth, being this is his 10th season. So he had some nicks and injuries during the season. But he played 13 and started 13 of 17 games. And obviously, the Dolphins made it into the playoffs as a wild card from the NFC East. He was his usual reliable self. He played 95.7% of the offensive snaps in the games that he played. And he was active, obviously, in the playoffs as they lost to Buffalo. He played 66 or 97%, 93% of the snaps in that game. So he's been a reliable player, 3-time All-Pro. Probably because of the games he missed, he won't be an All-Pro this year. But we picked Teron Armstead over the other couple of offensive tackles that kind of had, again, not breakout years, but certainly years that solidified them in the league. One was Titus Howard out of Alabama State for the Houston Texans. He started and played in all 17 games. Of course, the Texans were only 3-13-1 on the season. He played 94.2% of the offensive snaps, but he did get in all 17 games. He was one to consider. And the other one, you might want to call him the comeback player of the year on the offensive side. This is a guy who had never started, only in his second year out of North Carolina Central, Nick Leverett for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He started a career-high 10 games at left guard and right tackle, so he really played 2 positions. He played in a total of 11 games for the Buccaneers, and as you know, the Buccaneers won the NFC South, went into the playoffs where they lost to Dallas. But Leverett was hurt and did not play in that game. But the fact that he is credited with kind of solidifying the offensive line kind of towards the beginning of the season when he became a starter, and he stayed a starter for the rest of the season. But when you're choosing between the 3, I thought that Teron Armstead, in the fact of what he accomplished and what the Dolphins accomplished, deserved to be the player of the year. The big deal is we don't have any quarterbacks. We don't have any running backs. We don't have any guys who play regularly at wide receiver in the league. And hopefully, as we move along, maybe some of these guys will get an opportunity to play on a regular basis and put up some numbers that would have us consider them as the offensive player of the year.
And Teron Armstead, he was one of the big offensive off-season additions for the Miami Dolphins, playing most of his career Down in the Bayou with the New Orleans Saints, the Miami Dolphins signed him this offseason. They gave him a hefty bag, too. They signed him to a multiple-year. I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years, but it was a multiple-year deal.
It's 3 years. It's 3 years, yeah.
It was 2?
Mm-hmm.
So,
3
yeah,
years.
the Dolphins,
3
when they get their quarterback situation straight, they did have a lot of turnover at quarterback. When they get that straight, they've got Tyreek Hill, they've got Jalen Waddle still in his rookie contract, they've got Teron Armstead, at least for next season. So we're definitely going to keep looking out for the Dolphins. Now, we all know Special Teams Player of the Year. Go on.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot. A lot of the rookies played. A lot of them played primarily on special teams, like Jacoby Durant, as well as, not even James Houston. He didn't play a lot on special teams. But Marquise Bell, when he did get in, played special teams. DeJuan Dixon out of Norfolk State for Jacksonville. When he got in, he played a little bit on special teams. But the guy who played every week was Jamie Gillan out of Arkansas Pine Bluff, just like Teron Armstead. He played for the Golden Lions of Pine Bluff, was a terrific punter for them during his college career. Now in his 5th season, after 4 years with the Cleveland Browns, is now moved over to the New York Giants. As you know, as you said, the Giants made the playoffs. He ended up, for the season, he averaged 46.8 yards. And you'd think that would be high, but it was 18th in the NFL. But 46.8 yard average is an excellent average for a punter. So he was head and shoulders above anyone else. Basically guys who played on special teams. He played regularly. He landed 26 punts inside the 20. The Giants finished 9-7 and made the playoffs as a wild card, and even defeated Minnesota in the first round before they ran into that juggernaut from Philadelphia in the second round. So in that game this past week, he punted 5 times, just like you wanted him, for 216 yards, 43-yard average. But all in all, because of his consistency and how he played well and was a key addition for the Giants on special teams, he's our Special Teams Player of the Year.
Shout out to Jamie Gillan, holding down the Player of the Week so many times. He had to be the Player of the Year. Now, Rookie of the Year,
Absolutely.
We kind of spoiled it a little bit, but Rookie of the Year, who do we have?
Well, I thought that was the toughest decision, was to pick one rookie, because you had Joshua Williams out of Fayetteville State, the first guy drafted. He played in 17 games. He had 4 stars. He was not just a special teamer. He got an opportunity to play every down. In a couple of games, I think he played 90% of the snaps on defense. He had an interception. Obviously, as a rookie, that's a big accomplishment. I thought from that standpoint, if you were going to judge him based on the whole of the season, he would have been the Rookie of the Year. But then you had 2 other rookies that kind of splashed, to use a Mike Tomlin thing. They had splash plays, which I think singled them out as being under consideration. Maybe first on that list would have been James Houston, as we talked about, didn't play the first 11 games of the season, but when he did get in, he flashed every game he played. Got sacks in his first 3 games, 2 sacks, I think, in his first game, and then had a 3-sack game to finish with 8 sacks and set an NFL record for the most sacks for a player in their first 7 games. He had 8 sacks. How are you going to leave him out? Even though Joshua Williams played the whole season, this guy, for the 7 games that he played, had 8 sacks and finished just behind Aiden Hutchinson, the number 1 choice of the Lions in terms of sacks for that team. Great boding well going forward for Joshua Williams. And then you had Jacoby Durant. The kid only played in, I think it's 5-6 games for the LA Rams, but he played in 9 of the 17 games. He had 1 start, but he finished with 3 picks, amongst the leaders for the LA Rams. He won the award as the top rookie for the Rams, and he had a pick 6. Not only 3 picks, but he had a pick 6, and as a rookie, led the NFL in interception return yards. How do you discount that? So I said, we're going to have to split this 3 ways. Each of them had something that they excelled in and really showed their worth this season. So I thought we should split it between Joshua Williams, Jacoby Durant, and James Houston to say that we have a draft class this year that after a year when no HBCU players were drafted, we have a draft class this year that splashed in every way that they could, these 3 defensive guys. So we're sharing. We have try winners of the Rookie of the Year with Jacoby Durant, James Houston, and Joshua Williams.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. And we have a draft coming up, 2023 NFL draft coming up. We have a lot of exciting HBCU prospects coming out of this one. So make sure you guys stay tuned and tapped into the HBCU NFL Report. But this was the divisional round edition of the show. We are headed into the championship round, the NFC Championship. My Philadelphia Eagles, Javon Hargrave, going up against the San Francisco 49ers. On the AFC side, we have the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. I am Symone Stanley. He is Lute Williams. This is HBCU Game Day. Thank you guys so much for joining us.